Hi, this is Primary Cinema, and we know Tenet is like super confusing, but let's strip away the plot, exposition, and all the talk about algorithms, and look at the key mechanism that brings Tenet to life: reverse footage. It's really what I love most about the film, the simple ordinariness of its central narrative device. Time is running backwards. And to achieve this effect, all Nolan had to do was run the film the opposite way through the camera. It's really extraordinary when you think of it. The entire existence of a $225 million blockbuster is built on a weird gimmick from the earliest days of cinema. So after watching Tenet, I decided to look into some other uses of this technique. I now present to you a brief history of reverse footage in cinema. The use of reverse footage in films can be roughly broken down into three categories. Films that use the effect for purposes of spectacle, narrative, and practicality. I'll first start with spectacle, and the Lumiere brothers' film Demolition of a Wall. The effect was supposedly discovered by accident. A worker loaded the projector incorrectly, but was astonished with the results. Brick and dust was swooped off the ground and violently smacked back into shape. It was a landmark moment. For the first time in history, humans could in some way bend time to their liking, and soon dozens of reversed films were produced. It can be easy now to write off films like this and others from the cinema of attractions era as vapid fluff, but their importance should not be understated. What we're watching here is the birth of the special effect and CGI stuffed blockbusters we know today. Eventually, of course, narrative cinema would evolve and audiences were no longer impressed with such simple illusions. They opted instead for movies that offered a good story or appealing cast. Arguably, it wouldn't be onto Tenet more than 100 years later that audiences would, en masse, be awed by the reverse footage technique. But that's not to say filmmakers stopped using it. Rather, it adapted from being a key selling point of a movie to becoming just one of the many tools available to a filmmaker as they explore the narrative of their film. Let's look at some uses of the technique in the context of narrative. Another Frenchman, Jean Cocteau, made frequent use of reverse footage in his films. The candles magically lighting themselves in this scene is actually just reverse footage of the candles being blown out. The same is true for when the beast returns to his human body and rises from the ground. By his 1960 film, The Testament of Orpheus, Cocteau used the technique for all sorts of tricks. Sheets leap from canvases, and a woman fishes a burnt-up photo from a fire. All these reverse footage sequences contribute to the dreamlike, poetic style of Cocteau's films. The most extreme use of reverse footage can be found in the 1966 Czech film Happy End. The entire film is played out in this way, telling the story of a man's life in reverse, starting with his quote-unquote birth here. The film is an interesting structural study. I doubt even Nolan would dare try to conceive a whole movie played out in reverse nowadays. And the experiment was definitely rewarding, delivering some great comic moments and some really stunning visuals. Another example of this technique being used for comedic effect can be found in the Swedish bookstore scene in Top Secret. Not only is the video reversed, but so is the audio. The scene is played out in remarkably well choreographed one shot, which sees Val Kilmer toss books back onto their shelves with incredible accuracy, and ends with him sliding up a fireman's pole. But reverse footage doesn't have to be just funny or dreamlike. It can also be strangely haunting. This shot from Michael Mann's The Keep uses the technique to create a monster. The smoke played backwards is eerie and unnatural. Played forward, and the monster isn't nearly as scary. The opening credits to David Gordon Green's 2018 Halloween revival plays over a reverse time-lapse of a rotting pumpkin. It's a reference to the original film's credits and symbolizes the rebirth of the franchise, but it's also just plain spooky. Defying nature in this way and bringing something back to life harks back to classical horror, like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This sort of unrealness is also used to great effect in Evil Dead 2. Reverse footage is also frequently used when portraying memories on screen. Nolan's earlier film, Memento, opens with the reverse sequence of a man being shot and a Polaroid developing. This prepares the audience for the film's unique structure, but also places us in the mind of Guy Pearce's character, where every second of memory is precious and is to be analysed. In Bong Joon-ho's Mother, a scene is recalled multiple times throughout the film, but it is only shown in reverse when a key memory is unlocked. And in The Hunger Games, Katniss recalls her father's death in both forward and reverse time. The link between reverse footage and memory could be because of our experience remembering past events. We find it easier to recall recent memories, while it takes us longer to look back on earlier ones. Or it could be because memory, much like the bricks in the Lumiere brothers' film, has a habit of just clicking into place. Finally, let's move on to practical uses. These are more like fun facts / helpful tips for any filmmakers watching. Over the years, directors have developed some tricks using reverse footage that just makes their life a bit easier. If they do it right, you won't even notice it's there.
Okay. Show me.
For example, this scene from Christine was made by crew members creating dents in the car by pulling hidden strings. When played in reverse, it appears as if the car was fixing itself. And here's a good tip: if you ever want to pull off one of those cool Edgar Wright style whip pans, but just can't seem to get the final shot framed how you want it, simply set up the shot how you prefer, and then whip the camera away. When reversed, you got yourself a clean whip pan with a well-composed final shot. Or, if you're on a tight budget, consider doing something like what Rian Johnson did on his debut feature Brick. A plastic bag dragged over the camera, when played in reverse, gave the film a cheap and easy surrealist transition. Also, if you're trying to film characters hitting or stabbing each other with force, maybe take a leaf out of Tarantino's book, and instead shoot your actors pulling away from each other. When played back, it looks much more powerful than if the actors are actually worried about hurting their scene partner. And finally, if you're really stuck and need to stretch your film's runtime, look no further than this scene from Escape from the Planet of the Apes, where not only is footage reversed, but rewound multiple times to prolong the shot.
Mama, 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 mama.
Or yeah, maybe don't do that last one. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to Primary Cinema for more. If you have a favourite use of reverse footage in a film, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And a big thank you to all my recent subscribers. Your support and feedback is very much appreciated.